Hello students, welcome to the Recitals in-Depth. Herein, we will cover the international relations May 2024 current affairs topics in detail. The broader themes which we are going to cover are as follows: trade-related aspects, immigration issues, crisis in the Middle East, boundary disputes, management of disasters, and defense and security of Indo-Pacific region. Malaysia's orangutan diplomacy. Now, this is an unusual diplomatic strategy deployed by Malaysia so that it can boost its palm oil exports. It so happens that Malaysia is the second largest producer of palm oil in the world. And recently, it has been seeing decline in its exports to the European Union nations. This is because European Union nations have said that they would phase out all the commodities that would lead to environmental concerns, particularly deforestation. And for this, Malaysia has gone forward with this orangutan diplomacy. So what is it about? Let us try and understand. So first, let us understand what is animal diplomacy. Is it something new? Animal diplomacy is the use of living organisms by the governments to generate goodwill amongst its friendly nations. Now, there have been multiple uses of this animal diplomacy, and many times it has been used by certain nations, particularly the popular one being the panda diplomacy that was there by China. However, with respect to China, the purpose of panda diplomacy was different. Therein, they used to lease panda for a period of 10 years, and any offspring that would take birth during that period had to be returned to the Chinese government. But the purpose of orangutan diplomacy is different. It is to address the environmental concern that is raised by the European Union nations and also China and India. It seeks to state that orangutan gifts to these nations would serve as an evidence that it is palm oil that is being produced sustainably and it is not endangering the life and survival of species like orangutan. Now, let us also see what orangutans are. So firstly, they are native to rainforests of Malaysia and Indonesia. They are only found in parts of Borneo and Sumatra. Secondly, IUCN, that is International Union for Conservation of Nature, classifies their threatened status as critically endangered. This means that there is a threat to their survival and they face a high risk for extinction. But what is the relation with palm oil exports of these species? So, what happens whenever there is a palm oil plantation that has to produce palm oil, there has to be a certain amount of forested area that needs to be cut off. Now, this forested area is a habitat of this animal. So it would lead to habitat fragmentation or habitat degradation, and this would in turn endanger the survival of orangutans. So this is the reason that European Union nations would say that if you go for deforestation and then produce palm oil due to those palm oil plantations, then we would not be the ones at the receiving end. So this is the relation that orangutans have with the palm oil exports. Now, what is Malaysia's orangutan diplomacy and what is the environmental concern? So, a lot of conservationists have said that it is better that there must be in situ conservation and not ex situ, which means that orangutans must be conserved in the places that they thrive in, that they naturally thrive in, but not in areas where they are kept as showpieces in zoos. Therefore, it would further endanger their survival. The second thing is, they have also raised the concerns that how would this kind of a diplomacy lead to affect the efforts to increase existing populations. It would not enhance the population in any way, and further, it may lead to a further decline of population. So the rationale behind the diplomacy is being questioned. They have also suggested some measures that Malaysia could take to conserve them. The one is palm oil estates should set aside wildlife corridors that are safe for orangutans. Wildlife corridors would provide for safe passage of orangutans whenever there are plantations in between. And these wildlife corridors, wherever there is a habitat fragmentation, it would provide for escape to a better habitat for the orangutans. Also, they have called the government to outlaw further conversion of forest into palm oil plantations. So these are some of the suggestions that the conservationists have raised. Now, herein, we should also understand the motive of European Union with respect to phasing out commodities that lead to deforestation by 2030. So one reason could be protectionism. Now, protectionism of the industries of oil when it comes to olive oil. So olive oil is something that is produced abundantly within European Union region. However, it faces a stiff competition with palm oil. Palm oil is cheaper and also a commodity that is quite popular with these nations. So it may be a motive to protect and promote olive oil industries within the region. The second thing is, of course, the environmental concern. That is the European Union Deforestation Regulation, which says that any commodity that leads to deterioration of environment in form of deforestation, then we would phase out such commodities by 2030. So this is an environmental concern that they are raising. Also, with respect to Malaysia, how have they responded to such motives of European Union? They have gone forward with orangutan diplomacy, in which they are going to give orangutan as gifts to the nations that raise environmental concerns and prove that they are protecting the species as much as they can, and the palm oil that is being produced sustainably. Sustainably meaning it is not having any environmental deterioration effects. Also, Malaysia has called this crop apartheid. Now, crop apartheid is something they have called out European Union on. They have said that the biofuel production that is derived from this palm oil is not to be counted towards the renewable energy targets. And this is termed by Malaysia as crop apartheid because they have raised concerns over the discrimination of crops. Right? So these are the motives and these are the Malaysia's stance. Now, what is the utility with respect to India? Now, India is facing a slowdown in domestic production of palm oil and edible vegetable oils as well. So, it endangers the food security of India if it does not import palm oil from these nations, because India imports close to 60% from Malaysia and Indonesia. So it heavily depends upon its imports from these countries, and therefore it cannot part away with it because a large part of population depends on it. Also, for biofuel production and energy security, to meet the needs and to meet the INDCs that is committed by India, that is, we will reduce the fossil fuel consumption by 40% under our Panchamrita goals, we need to have biofuel production. And we also have a national biofuel policy in which palm oil would be something which is quite useful. So the palm oil domestic production would also be needed to supplement our imports. Otherwise, it would be heavy dependence, and there might be restrictions in the future which may cut off the supply from these imports. Also, with respect to biodiversity conservation, we have become stricter when it comes to Wildlife Protection Act 1972, which went for an amendment in 2023. Now the list of endangered and critically endangered animals aligns with the CITES treaty. So, with respect to orangutans, they would also raise concerns. So for now, what India can do is to produce domestic supplies of palm oil under its various programs like ISOPOM, and also gradually reduce the dependence on imports from these countries which may have environmental repercussions. United Kingdom Graduate Visa Scheme. Recently, to curb illegal immigration and to curb the issues of a low-paying gig economy, UK has introduced some changes in its graduate visa scheme. Let us have a look. For first, our understanding about visa should be clear. So what is a visa? It is a conditional authorization by a polity for a foreigner to enter, remain within, or leave the country. Now, this visa document, it also includes the limits on duration of stay, that is how long some people can stay in the country, the areas that they are permitted to visit, the areas they may not be permitted to visit, and their working status, whether they are allowed to hold a job in these areas. So these are the things that are included in visa. Now, what is the utility of visa? It will provide for the nation to provide for reciprocity measures. That is against a country which imposes such restrictions against its own citizens. Also, it is useful for putting into place the immigration rules. As far as UK is concerned, there are three types of visa. One is visitor visa, that is required for entry or transit through the region of UK. Then would come the student visa, which is particularly for the ones studying in the universities of United Kingdom. The third is the work visa, wherein the graduate route visa also is categorized in. It states how many years can you work in UK and for how many years can you look for work within the country. Now that we have understood what a visa is, let us move on and understand what graduate route visa scheme is all about. Now, graduate route visa scheme was introduced in July 2021 by the United Kingdom government. It said that people who are graduating from the United Kingdom universities with higher education degrees, whether in undergraduate or postgraduate courses, they can stay within the country for 2 more years and can look for work. For PhD graduates, they would allow up to 3 years of work looking in the country, and it would be a job at any skill level. That is, you may not have a job offer and you may go for a lower skilled job. So this has raised concern, and this is why it is in news. Why? Because it has led to low paying jobs. It has led to crimes at some times and creation of low-skilled gig economy. With respect to its misuse, it has also been misused to go for work in United Kingdom without actually studying for it. So people are using graduate route to get work in UK without actually getting into the United Kingdom universities. Okay. So the Britain government, they decided, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said that they would be recruiting only the brightest and the best students from across the globe under this graduate route visa scheme. And this would curb the number of international students that are coming to their universities. This is to eliminate the reasons like this: low paying jobs, crimes, low skilled economy, and misuse of this route of visa. So let us understand what are the impacts of this stance. So the biggest impact would be felt on the Indian students. This is because 42% of GRV holders are there between 2021 to 2023. It means the students who come from India to study in the universities of United Kingdom would not be allowed to do so unless they prove their merit. They can do it because they would be provided with tests, that is English tests, that would ascertain their capabilities. Now this provides for uncertainty in the postgraduate courses and also work life after graduation. So the impact would be also further felt when the average students would not get admissions into United Kingdom universities. This would have effect on United Kingdom as well. There would be financial losses. As per the Migration Advisory Committee, there would be considerable financial losses for the United Kingdom universities. The second is overall effect, because even the low paying jobs or the low skilled jobs are something that contribute to the GDP of the country. Then academic institutions may lose out on the best and the brightest still. Why? Because they would look for countries with better prospects in the future and not so restrictive as is through this scheme. The fourth concern is that there is strong opposition from key cabinet ministers for this move. So at present, the government has changed its stance and gone for smaller changes. Smaller changes which include elimination of misuse of immigration routes. Then, with respect to agents that advertise misleadingly to the countries and provide with average students, they would be brought to book and they would be questioned on the quality of students. With respect to universities, if the dropout rate is huge, then they would lose their ability to recruit students from the globe. So these are the stances that UK government is planning to go forward with. Ireland, Spain and Norway formally recognize Palestine. Now this is a symbolic support which would also may lead to European Union nations going forward with support to the Palestine statehood. Presently, only 7 out of the 27 European Union countries support the statehood of Palestine. It is also done with the motive that Israel would come to terms of peace talks with Palestine. To understand this issue further, let us delve into it. So, the history of India in Israel-Palestine issue. So, to begin with, this region of Palestine was under Ottoman Empire till World War I. Post World War I, the League of Nations gave this region of Palestine to Britain. Now, Britain observed that there are Jewish people in European countries and they are murdered, persecuted wherever they go. And this is because they do not have a homeland for themselves. And this led to Balfour Declaration. Balfour Declaration was there in 1917. Balfour Declaration, 1917. Now, this stated that there must be a Jewish homeland in the region that was originally made for the Israelis. And now, from 1917 to 1947, what happens is there are waves of migration that happen from European countries to the Palestine region of the Jews. They slowly start occupying these spaces and they start building economic activities, they start utilizing the resources of the land, and they also go for jobs in these places. They buy land as well. So there is a threat to the Palestinian population and they get threatened by this sudden rise of population of Israelis within their own country. Now in 1947, the UN partition plan takes place. The United Nations partition plan states that the region has to be separated into two states. That is, one should be for the Arabs and the other for the Jewish people. Now, it so happened that for the Palestinians or for the Arabs, only a 45% area was demarcated, while for Israelis, this lay at 55%. Obviously, Palestinians rejected this plan. And in 1948, the first independence war of Israel started. Due to this, the independence of Israelis were ascertained and they started existing as a different state. Now, the Arab nations wanted to support Palestine on this issue and therefore they fought wars on the behalf of Palestine. So in 1967, we have 6 Days War, in which countries like Jordan, Egypt participated and fought the Israelis. Now they were again defeated. Israelis won and they occupied West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula and other territories. So this was West Bank and this is the Gaza Strip. Further, even within these areas of West Bank and Gaza Strip, there have been settlements of Israelis and this has led to fragmentation of these areas and restrictions in mobility for Palestinians. So this has raised a lot of issues and conflicts in these regions. Now let us understand, were there peace efforts and why do the conflict still continues? So we have the first peace effort and it was there in 1978. It was the Camp David Accords. This was the first time when an Arab state, namely Egypt, recognized Israel. So this was a step in peace process. The second one, significant one, was the Oslo Accords. So Oslo Accords was signed between Palestine Liberation Organization and Israel. This means that PLO would recognize Israel as a state and also recognize their existence as their neighbors. With respect to PLO, they would be given by Israel self-rule, but in limited sense. Limited self-rule in areas of West Bank and Gaza Strip. However, Oslo Accords would break down further because of Israeli settlements being taken place even in West Bank. Now, because of this, there would be multiple Palestinian uprisings because there is no such peace process that is put into place effectively. In 2005, Israel goes for disengagement in Gaza. This it does unilaterally by Israel. Now in 2007, what happens in Gaza Strip, Hamas control takes place. Now Hamas are a militant group and they do not recognize Israel, and this is also something that they are in conflict with the PLO, because PLO recognizes Israel, however Hamas do not, and their main mode of getting the land for themselves, which they think is the homeland for Islamic Brotherhood, would be the Gaza Strip completely and whole of the territory of Palestine. For this, they would raise regular wars or regularly attack the Israeli forces or civilians, which has resulted into multiple loss of lives and property. And Israel has not also stayed behind. They have airstruck these places within the Gaza. So the Gaza wars is something which has continued over time, and recently in 2021 and 2023, it still exists. While there was an effort to normalize the relationship under the Abraham Accords between the Arab nations and Israel, but it has not led to a final conclusion in this matter. So the conflict continues, and also the conflict is serving the militant groups like Hamas quite well. It is an economy of conflict that is being created and managed. So a peaceful resolution is something which they might not settle for. Now let us see what has been the support for Palestine statehood. So in 1948, the United Nations created Israel and envisaged a neighboring Palestine state. This was again voted in May 2024. However, Palestine has not given a member status. It still reserves an observer status in UN. Now, with the voting, there is 143 nations out of 193 United Nations that voted in favor of Palestine getting its statehood and it getting recognized globally. With respect to Western countries like US and Britain, they hold that the statehood of Palestine would not be recognized by them and will also be at times vetoed if they do not negotiate peacefully with Israelis. However, no such peaceful negotiation has taken place since the year 2008. So effectively, there is no peaceful resolution in place at present. What has been India's support for Palestine statehood? India has a balanced approach. One, it has historically supported the statehood of Palestine through its non-alignment movement and throughout 1950s to 1990s. Also, India holds diplomatic relations or ties with Israel. So this is a balanced approach that India is going forward with. Let us understand the balanced approach of India. The first thing is India supports two-state solution in which it would recognize both Israel and Palestine as having the right over the region. Secondly, with respect to UN vote, India has always voted for recognition of Palestine state. There have been high-level visits with the Prime Minister and the President visiting both the regions, both Palestine and Israel. With respect to strategic partnership, Israelis have always supported India, whether it was in the wars with Pakistan or it is with respect to technology transfers, water management, agriculture, and so on. So these strategic partners also make Israeli an important ally. India has also extended humanitarian assistance to these regions, to both Palestine as well as Israel. With respect to Israel, they have given assistance when the pandemic of COVID-19 hit. With respect to Palestine, the regular social services like healthcare, education has been extended by India to these regions. So this is the crisis in the Middle East that everyone is talking about and has certain things in mind when it comes to the support of recognizing Palestine's statehood. More and more countries are joining the statehood of Palestine and supporting the issue. India-Nepal border dispute. Now, recently, Nepal government has come out with a rupees 100 currency note, which has printed the map of Nepal, including the disputed regions of Limpiadhura, Kalapani and Lipo Lake. These are some disputed regions that is disputed with respect to India. India considers these regions as their own and part of Uttarakhand, while Nepalis have claimed that these territories are theirs. So let us have a look into the issue. Now, the negotiations for this border dispute has always taken place between the governments, between the successive governments of India and Nepal. However, it was in 2014 when the prime ministers of both the countries agreed that there must be diplomatic channels to resolve this issue of border. Only diplomatic channels must be used. Come 2020, India constructs a road from India to China, which is a motorable road link for Kailash Mansarovar pilgrims. This was done with the effect so that it quickens the arrival of the pilgrims. Now, this is something which was taken as an offense by the Nepali government. They went for a constitutional amendment bill which stated that there must be addition of regions of Limpiadhura, Kalapani and Lipo Lake within their map. India called this cartographic aggression. That is, they are including within their boundaries the disputed regions and the diplomatic channel for their resolution has not been adopted. This has been done unilaterally. Come to 2024, they do it again with the currency note. The External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has said that these unilateral measures by the Nepali government would not change the reality on ground. Now, to understand why this dispute arose in the first place, we go into the history of this issue. So, why is there a boundary dispute in the first place? From 1814 to 1816, there were Anglo-Nepal wars that took place. And in this, EIC, that is East India Company, won. And Nepal had to surrender the territories west of Kali River. Now, the source of Kali River was not determined. That is, the ridge line was not defined. However, in the British surveyor maps, it was stated that in 1817, 1827, and as the last map in that survey in 1947 showed that these regions, the source of Kali River is Kalapani, which means that effectively Limpiadhura, Kalapani and Lipu Lake Pass should fall into the Indian territory. However, what the Nepali claim is that the source of Kali River is actually Limpiadhura, and with this, the territory to the eastern part, that is, to the western part of this, would lie with the Nepal territory. So effectively, these three regions, that is Limpiadhura, Kalapani and Lipu Lake Pass, would be something that the Nepal should own. And therefore, there is a constant discrepancy and border dispute that takes place. The first time that it was raised by Nepal was in 1988. Now, let us understand the significance of India-Nepal relationships with respect to the present border disputes as well. Now, there is a political turmoil in Nepal because there are multiple coalitions as well as breakdown of coalitions when it comes to Nepali parliament. That is, presently there is a coalition of pro-China party and pro-India party. So there is obviously some amount of Chinese card that may be played at this point of time. Also, there was an issue with respect to representation of Madhesis in the constitution in 2015 that bore a grudge with the Indian government. Also, India has called out Nepal for this cartographic aggression time and again in 2020 and now in 2024. But there are some positives that we have to consider when it comes to the relationship. One is the economic interest. India is one of the largest trading partners of Nepal, and most of its transit happens through the territory of India. With respect to trade, it has grown 3 times in the last 10 years. With respect to strategic interest, because we share our borders with Nepal and it is an open border, it requires that we have good relations with them so that cross-border crimes can be stopped. Then there is people-to-people cooperation. There's a huge amount of Nepali diaspora that comes and works in the Indian territory and looks for employment. Also, Nepal would form a very prominent member and would be eligible for recognizing them as under the foreign policy, that is neighborhood first policy. We would recognize that regional connectivity is essential and we are economically interdependent and there is no way to avoid it. We cannot have closed borders. So there is a very important reason with respect to the relationships and to iron out the souring relations so that a dispute can be resolved. So what is the way forward for India? The way forward firstly is there must be timely resolution of the dispute. The External Affairs Minister has also said that maybe the Nepal government is not happy with the pace and urgency with which the boundary dispute is being settled. So there must be some time frame so that this boundary dispute is attained resolution at the earliest. The second thing is there is a strategic interest as well. Now Limpiadhura is at a height and it is also at the tri-junction of India, China and Nepal border. And the resolution with respect to this territory being a part of India is of high significance for the security of borders. Also, there must be a dialogue at the political level, and there must not be unilateral measures being taken independently. The last thing is the currency note issue must be resolved. Even within the Nepal, there is a lot of section of people who have raised their concerns with going forward with the currency note, which includes such a map and damages the relationship that they have with their neighbor. So this is the Indian border dispute with Nepal. External Affairs Minister hosts Maldivian Foreign Minister. Now this is a significant news for various reasons. Now it is for first time that there is a high level visit to India since November 2024. That is before elections. In November 2024, President Mohammad Muizzu was elected, and since then there had been no visit up until now. And this is a first high-level visit to India. Now this visit is significant because it is to ease the tensions between Maldives and India that has been created. For one, the elections were won on India out poll plank. Now within the domestic politics of Maldives, there was India out campaign. What it was that they demanded that India should withdraw their military personnel from the island state. And after coming to power, they offered a deadline. The deadline was fixed for 10th of May for India to withdraw its troops. They said it was a threat to their sovereignty. However, the troops were there for maritime surveillance, they were there for search and rescue operations, they were there for medical evacuations in emergency situations, and so on. However, India did not want to lose out on relations with Maldives, so it withdrew its military troops and replaced them with civilians from Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to manage the operations in the place. Also, there is a recognition by Maldives that there is a strain on tourism that is being felt. Now, Prime Minister Modi had visited the neighboring islands of Lakshadweep, and it was a promotional visit. This was not tendered well because there were undiplomatic remarks made by some of the key ministers of the Maldivian government. But this was responded by the Indian social media with boycott Maldives, which led to a drop in tourist arrivals in Maldives. And this strain has been felt, and therefore this high-level visit becomes even more significant. Also, there is a rising influence of China because the present government is pro-China. It is tilted towards Chinese interest, and therefore it has also gone for Belt and Road Initiative, that is constructing infrastructure within their region and connectivity to trade routes. Also, with respect to disaster reduction, China has gone forward for mitigating the effect of natural disaster within the nation. Tourism cooperation. China recognizes that Maldives is basically tourism-based economy, and therefore it has promised that there would be a high footfall of tourists from China. So these are the important points because of which this visit becomes highly significant. Now, to put it into context, let us also understand what the significance of India-Maldives relation is. As you can see, this is the coastline of southern India, and this is Maldives. This is the Minicoy Island of Lakshadweep, and this is divided by 8-degree channel. Maps are completely very important when you answer your international relations questions, also with respect to your prelims paper. Now, Maldives is significant for India. For one, it has a strategic location. That is, it is the gateway to the Arabian Sea, and it helps us to monitor the maritime traffic and also protect our exclusive economic zone, thereby enhancing regional security. There is also a cultural link. India and Maldives find historical unification in the religion of Buddhism. With respect to regional stability, Indian efforts with respect to Indian Ocean region is also complemented when it comes to Maldives. What is the significance of India for Maldives? The first one is there is essential supplies that are given by India to the nation. That is in the form of food or drinking water, or even with respect to constructing infrastructure, giving them cement or rock boulders and so on. There is dominance in Maldives tourism. Now, Indian tourist arrivals in Maldives is close to 11.2% in 2023, and it leads in the numbers with respect to foreign tourist arrivals in the country. Also, India is a security provider for Maldives. In 1988, when a coup happened with respect to the Maldivian government to overthrow the government, it was India with its Operation Cactus that helped stabilize the government and ward off the coup forces. Also, India conducts joint exercises in the form of Equivalent, Ekta and Dosti with Maldives. Now, let us also look at what were the decisions that were taken during this visit. Now, Maldives faces a debt crisis, and therefore, India has offered budgetary support of $50 million. Now, these are to be subscribed by SBI, that is State Bank of India, in the capital of Maldives, and it would be subscribed by T-bills, that is treasury bills. This would be provided by the bank to the Maldives for infrastructure and community projects. This would be interest-free in nature. Also, there are plans to launch RuPay card service, that is the global card payment network that is also there in Bhutan and Nepal. Now, since the domestic politics have led to such souring of relationship with India and Maldives, it is time to build on the friendship again. And with the suspension of those key ministers who had made disparaging remarks about the Indian Prime Ministers when he came to Lakshadweep, it is also known that Maldives wants to construct and rebuild the trust, and it also wants to offer a diplomatic dialogue to India. India's aid to disaster-hit Papua New Guinea. Now, this region of Papua New Guinea, that is in Inga province, it has been hit by a landslide. Now, this landslide has occurred because of excessive rainfall and numerous streams that run through the region. This has led to a huge amount of mud flow and a number of villages being buried under it. Close to 2,000 lives have been lost as per the government. Now, this becomes a lot more significant because it continues to flow, and it is said that if the debris flow is not stopped, then it could further endanger 6,000 more lives. So this is a significant event, and it is a disaster which every country in the world should also support Papua New Guinea in. Particularly also because this kind of an event is bound to create contagious diseases and it is not going to stay within the region. The second, there is a huge relief operation barrier that has been created because the landslide has blocked the stretch of road. Close to 200 meters of road has been blocked, and this prevents the relief operations from going into the areas that are affected. So, let us look at the disaster management process. Now, when a disaster occurs, we have this disaster management cycle. When a disaster occurs, there has to be response and recovery. So, the response comes in the form of evacuation plans. Now, as was said before, if the debris flow is not stopped, 6,000 people may also be buried under the landslide. So there are evacuation plans for them. With respect to response, United Nations has been asked by the government to provide for heavy earth removal equipment so that these areas can be cleared off and the people who are buried under the mud flow can be taken away. With respect to India and Australia, there has been financial aid that is being given to Papua New Guinea. India has contributed $1 billion for the relief of the said country. Now let us also understand what the importance of Papua New Guinea is for India. Now India and Papua New Guinea are part of FIPIC, that is Forum for Indo-Pacific Islands Cooperation. And in May 2023, they co-hosted these cooperation units. Also, these areas form a shipping line. There are multiple shipping lines in this area. With respect to FIPIC, it is also understood that it supports for sovereignty and integrity of nations and aims to become the voice of Global South. It also helps to inform and improve international institutions. Now, it is also important with respect to strategic location because it falls near Australia and connects it to the Pacific Ocean. There is also a strategic interest because 1/6 population is that of Indian diaspora. With respect to the natural resources, there are 8 million tons of liquefied natural gas that is exported from this region, and so it becomes very significant as far as the renewable energy or the clean source of energy is being concerned. So what are the efforts that India has within this region? So with respect to understanding the climate change would lead to sea level rise, and therefore it endangers this island state. It has the probability of getting submerged in the next 100 years or so. So we are switching towards more renewable energy and non-fossil fuel consumption. And for this, we have an organization by the name of International Solar Alliance that helps to promote this initiative. With respect to disasters, because of climate change, there is a number of extreme weather events that are taking place in this region. So we have a coalition for disaster resilience so that we can reduce disaster risk and also provide for safety and financial aid. With respect to foreign policy, we have in place the Act East policy. wherein we engage through economic and strategic interest in the eastern part of India, the eastern countries of India. There is developmental diplomacy as well, wherein India provides for financial aids because it is recognized that nearly 40% population of this country is poor and it has under-resourced healthcare systems. It is democracy deficit in nature and also has corruption. So for this, India from time and again provides financial aid in the form of line of credit to Papua New Guinea. So also when it comes to FIPIC, it aims to align world order with the voice of the global south. That is, even these developing nations should be heard and their concerns should be noted and catered to. So this is about the disaster hit Papua New Guinea. India and Iran signed 10-year contract for Chabahar port. Let us see where this Chabahar port is geographically located. Now, Chabahar port is a deep water port that is located in the southwestern part of Iran. It is on the Gulf of Oman. So here is Chabahar. It is significant because it is on the western border of Iran and Pakistan. Here we also have Gwadar port. This is Gwadar port is something which is being developed by China for its own interest. And therefore, these can be said to be a competition between India and China. Now, with respect to Chabahar port, the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, was signed in 2015. However, certain things could not get into the agreement phase, and this has led to a 10-year delay in the agreement. Chabahar port is also significant because of INSTC, that is International North-South Transport Corridor. It connects, you can say that it is a multimodal transport system which would connect India, that is Indian Ocean as well, and Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea through Iran, particularly through the Chabahar port, and further on to the northern Europe through St. Petersburg in Russia. So this again would go for trade route. So this is significant with respect to Indian export and trade routes. So let us understand why is Chabahar port important for India. So first of all, there is strategic significance. The strategic significance would come in form of it is an alternative trade route. Now, Pakistan does not allow India to trade passing through its land, and Afghanistan and Central Asian regions are friendlier nations which would go for trade with India. So basically, even the imports from Central Asian regions that are resource rich in nature, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, is stopped. So through this Chabahar route from Kandla port or the Mumbai port, we can travel up to Chabahar and go into the areas of Afghanistan up to its capital. So this is one strategic significance. Also, there is investment which is given for Iran. Now, Iran faced sanctions over its oil exports in 2012 by the United States. India also had to cut its import from of oil from Iran. And this had led to a drop in revenue of Iran. So even this agreement would be something that would increase the revenue of Iranian government and provide for the strategic interest of India. Third would be, it would be effective to counter Chinese presence in Gwadar port, that is here. Right? Okay. Apart from this, it is also a humanitarian corridor. This is because in 2019, COVID, this was the first responder, and there were medicines and vaccines that were given through this route to Afghanistan. Also, in 2021, when the locust attack took place, India was offering malathion, that is an environmentally friendly pesticide, to Afghanistan to manage its agriculture. With respect to INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor, it will provide for an efficient trade route. That is, there would be reduction of 30% in cost and reduction of 40% in time required to cover this trade route. So it provides for an efficient trade as well. It also helps to boost India-Afghan relations, and India has certainly done so. With respect to Chabahar port, this would be constructed. This is a line that would be utilized, and Iran would let India use this land and go up to Iran's Zaranj province, that is the border city. And from this, India has constructed a road, that is Zaranj-Delaram road highway, that is to reach various places in Afghanistan and provide for effective trade. Now, what are the key highlights of the agreement? The first one is that it is a long-term agreement, and it had faced some delays, and this was because of the arbitration issues that had to be settled. And in the meanwhile, from 2015 onwards, there were short-term leases given to India so that they could utilize the benefit of Chabahar port. Also, with respect to funding, India would aim to provide for $120 million to construct the infrastructure in this Chabahar port. So these are the key highlights of the long-term agreement between India and Iran. Looking forward, what are the challenges that we are going to face? One is the potential risk of US sanctions. Since US has imposed sanctions on Iran's oil, there might be further potential sanctions that may be placed on India because it is utilizing the Chabahar port and developing friendlier relations with Iran. With respect to Houthis in Yemen and the Red Sea crisis, there would be regional instability. Also, India's aspiration to engage with landlocked Afghanistan would also be affected because of the present regime, that is Afghanistan Taliban. So what turns out in the case of Chabahar port, it remains to be seen. However, India would like to engage with further Central Asian region that is resource rich in nature, and also utilize the trade route so that it can reach European nations. So this is all. Thank you so much.